Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, Welcome to one more very interesting webinar, the online seminar organized by TiE Mumbai. By now, TiE Mumbai has organized 233 webinars in last 6.5 months, 475 hours of content, 26,000 participants, and who have joined from 70 different cities worldwide. So today we have a very interesting topic, the Indian cannabis story, the good, the bad, and the truth. So we have to talk on this two co-founders of Bombay Hemp Club, BOHECO as it's called. We'll talk on this very interesting subject. My own knowledge of this was practically nil till I talked to them. And what we had planned for half an hour of discussion lasted for 2 hours, and it was continuing because there was so much to understand what exactly is this animal. So welcome to you, Jahan Peston James and Avnish Pandya, the co-founders and directors of BOHECO. Both were the HR college students, and they will explain later how they got idea, but from there they started. This is their first venture, BOHECO. I have with me a very leading strategy consultant, Raj Nair, my colleague on the board of TiE Mumbai, also the past president of Indian Merchants Chamber, a strategy consultant, an entrepreneur, and an investor. He's chairman of Avalon Consulting, which does strategy, analytics, and business transformation. He's an IIT graduate, and I am Ahmedabad alumni. He mentored a lot of startup entrepreneurs. One of rare people globally to have predicted 2008-9 financial crisis in 2007. And also early this year, he has written an article in New York Times on that. He's done a report, as he does every year, about New York on the tipping point about 2020 and the changes that are likely in this year. And a lot of them are being proved very true. So welcome to you, Raj, and thanks for joining me on this wonderful event. Okay, so now, as I said, my own knowledge was very limited. And I must say right in the beginning, upfront, I have never tried any cannabis in any form, ever. I don't smoke in any case, so I have no personal experience. I would be as eager to listen to both of you, Avnish and Jahan, as everyone else. And I'm very sure that the participants who joined us today will have something to take home, not just knowledge, but also some interesting tips from these two founders about what we can do with some of the parts of this plant and how women can use to beautify them, and also all men and women to use as health foods. So my first question, as I said, we need to first understand, get the knowledge, Jahan, what is cannabis? What is hemp? What is marijuana? There's so much we hear every day on television, marijuana, marijuana. What is it? Are they all similar? Any difference? What comes under narcotic? What doesn't come under narcotic? So can you just explain firstly this?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Atul Bhai, and a pleasure to be on the platform with yourselves and esteemed colleagues like Raj as well. And thank you so much to the TiE Mumbai team for extending this webinar majorly to create awareness around what hemp and cannabis is. Now, when we speak of cannabis, as you correctly mentioned, Atul Bhai, it has so many names. It has so much kind of mystery attached to it. But what I'd like to do and what we like to do today is help dispel myths and help create more understanding amongst all the viewers today. So what I will just do is I will share my screen with everybody, and we will begin at the perfect place to start. That is around, and please let me know if you can see what I have uploaded.
Not yet.
Sure. Yes. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So this is the place for our discussion to begin. When we speak of cannabis, the plant of cannabis has evolved for centuries, starting from countries like India and in the upper Himalayas. But over the last few centuries, what has occurred is three major species of this plant exist today. So when we talk of cannabis, there are three major uses of it. There is the industrial use from the hemp or the cannabis plant, where the plant is low in narcotic nature, but you use the fiber and the seed for a range of different industrial applications. The second, and as you can see in the chart here, it refers to a plant called that says low THC. Now, the important thing to understand when we talk of cannabis, the first thing comes to your mind is getting high. The element of cannabis that gets you high is one chemical compound in the flower and leaf called THC or tetrahydrocannabinol. So when we speak of cannabis, we refer to three different types of uses. One is from a plant that is low in narcotic use or low in THC, where the fiber and seed are used for different industrial applications. A second is a plant where the THC is a little higher, that goes into medical uses. The name cannabis indica actually coming from India historically because of the fact that this type of cannabis species used to grow in certain parts of hilly states in India when it was first characterized by Carolus Linnaeus. Now, this variety can be high in narcotic use, but the THC, one of the chemical compounds, can be used, of course, for the recreational part, but more importantly for its medical use, where currently in different countries, it's being used for pain relief and different measures, which we'll speak about. And it's also combined with other chemical compounds within the same flower and leaf, like CBD and CBN, which many people who are viewing might have heard about, that come in complement for the medical use of the cannabis plant. So Atul Bhai, if I were to summarize it in one key line, the way to think of it is there is industrial hemp and medical cannabis or recreational cannabis or ganja as we call it. Industrial hemp is like a pet cat in your house that is easily domesticated, has low risk, and has extreme high potential. Well, if you look at the high THC recreational cannabis, what we call ganja, that is the flower of the cannabis plant, which is high in narcotic value, that would be like a tiger that is wild in the jungle, is untamed, and requires a lot of programming to be able to be more proactive in its utility from a cannabis point of view. So that's how cannabis, hemp, marijuana, ganja have been brought down as concepts. And I think the last bit I'd like to offer is the difference between three things we hear all in popular media today. What is ganja, what is bhang, and what is charas? Now, what we call are, as per the Narcotic and NDPS or the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of India, ganja is the flowering top or the fruiting top of a cannabis plant. Bhang is the leaf of the cannabis plant, which is not governed as a narcotic. And from the flower, when you rub the flower, you get a resin called charas. Now, between these three, the flower and the leaf have medical use, but that has to be very well controlled. And that's where a lot of countries, as we will discuss, are doing a great job.
Okay, great. Let's take this forward in terms of understanding different parts of the plant. Now, as I have understood that you have seeds, the hemp seeds, and then you have fiber, you have leaves, and then you have flowers. So there are
That's
four
correct.
different parts. So would you like to explain as to what is the use of each of the four parts and what products come out of these?
Absolutely. I think I'll allow Avnish to take this, and I'll chime on in at the end as well.
Sure. Yes, Avnish.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So, as Jahan mentioned, there are 4 to 5 major parts of the plant that have all different types of uses. So, let's start off with the fiber of the hemp plant. The fiber of the hemp plant is something which is very similar to linen, as we may call it, as a bast fiber crop. For example, this T-shirt that I'm wearing right now has been spun out of hemp yarn. So it's a very high grade quality fiber that can be made into lots of woven and knitted textiles, as well as it could be applied in a whole bunch of other industrial applications as well. The second comes to be the seed of the cannabis or the hemp plant. It is known to be a very strong superfood considering the power pack nutrients and micronutrients that are present. We have the whole balance of essential fatty acids, the regulated amino acids, as well as the right kind of digestible protein. So from the seed itself, we get products such as hemp seeds, which would be like alsi seeds or quinoa seeds. Then we have the protein that is extracted out of the seed, which would be a good strong vegan replacement for whey protein or soy protein or things like that. And we have an essential oil that comes out, a cold press oil that comes out of the seed of the plant. That oil, again, just like coconut oil or olive oil, is multi-purpose in its application. It could be used as a cosmetic ingredient or could be used also as a consumption oil because of its high nutritious value. Then come the leaves of the cannabis plant. So the leaves of the cannabis plant are generically known as bhang in India. In fact, bhang is the part of the cannabis plant that can give you a mild psychoactive effect, but is not banned in India. It is regulated under the Excise Acts. So it is regulated as an intoxicant. Hence, in states like Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, you can see bhang thekas legally selling bhang. India has a unique relationship with bhang because that is one of the parts of the plant along with the seed that has been mentioned in Sushruta Samhita as well as our other authoritative Ayurvedic texts for its medical properties. And its medical properties include things like taking care of the digestive tract, taking care of menstrual pain, certain kinds of neuropathic pains, issues related to epilepsy. So there are a whole bunch of indications that our authoritative texts talk about, and the leaves have been kind of used so far in extremely alternative and rare traditional medicine. But what Bohiko is kind of doing is bringing it to the forefront as well. So our company is licensed to manufacture the seed-based products as well as the leaf-based products as well. And last comes the flower of the cannabis plant. As Jahan mentioned, that's a narcotic. That specific part of the cannabis plant requires the most amount of licensing to be able to work. As per the current regulation, under supervision and a medical prescription, one can get that kind of medicine as well. Though it is not become a very mainstream thing yet, but we see that changing step by step as our regulators also understand its use much better.
So, Avnish, the recreational use of the hemp flower, we'll come to it later. Now, when you say medicinal use, do you mean Ayurvedic use or you also mean allopathic use?
So that's a very good question. In fact, as from an allopathy perspective, there have been 2 to 3 cannabis-based drugs that have been approved globally. Specifically, one drug known as Epidiolex that is approved by the US FDA for Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. These are mainly pediatric epilepsies. There is another drug called Sativex, which is approved in Canada, Australia, and Europe for spasms caused due to multiple sclerosis. This is also a prescription drug that has THC CBD from the cannabis plant present in it. There are certain synthetic versions of THC that are also available. So that's the allopathic side of cannabis-based medicine. None of these products are currently available in India because of their patent issues, etc., etc. What we are working with is what we would define as a phytopharmaceutical, which is more of a botanical based drug where the source of the drug is the botanic, while we're trying to standardize the key ingredients, which are the active ingredients such as THC and CBD. So we are working more from the Ayurvedic side because that gives us a much more accessible regulatory pathway to be able to bring products to market, as well as target indications at a larger level. So there is science at both levels that's happening.
So this Ayurvedic use is a new use, or it's been happening in India for a long time?
So in fact, from a historical point of view, Atul Bhai, the books like the Charak Samhita, there are about 145 Rasa Granthas, 125 Chikitsa Granthas that have mention of use of bhang or the leaf as a powder or the seed of the plant for different types of health-based purposes, whether for different types of pain, different actually managing pain or symptoms related to anxiety, symptoms related to digestion, sexual health, elderly wellness, cardiovascular health, which has been recorded and documented in Ayurvedic texts for the last few centuries. Now, what has occurred on this time is for the longest time when we talk of Ayurveda, we talk of vatis, we talk of churnas, we talk of gulika, the capsules, the pills, the classical formulations. But gradually over time, the use of bhang or the cannabis leaf in patented and proprietary formulations has become a greater touching point when working with the ministries of Ayush and working with different universities. And what adds extreme value in these cases is because currently today, the use and collection of the leaf that is used for bhang occurs through state excise and state FDA mechanisms in different states from a supply point of view. And that's where a production and processing licenses come in for proprietary Ayurvedic medicines, as we see all over the place. But what is extremely interesting is, in fact, there are Ayush single arm open label studies that show from the last 3 years that show that bhang leaf has been used on chronic pain patients and actually seen significant improvement in their symptoms. And that really excited us by getting access to this information and being able to see that even though the world West has done it in the last 40 years, India has been doing this for thousands of years. And maybe this is now the time to reclaim the legacy of bhang and cannabis and Ayurveda together.
So you mentioned hemp oil, CBD oil. So is there a cosmetic use of this? Can you explain that more?
Correct. That's correct. So I'll explain the function basically. When we talk of CBD as a component has two most major benefits. One is related to stress, anxiety in dealing with epileptic conditions. The second is anti-inflammatory potential. Now, what tends to occur is a lot of use of cosmetics and skincare has seen the CBD being used wherein which once it permeates the skin, because it can only permeate the first few layers of the epidermis, it actually brings down inflammation, swelling, acne, eczema. In fact, we have a trial clinical study at the National Institute of Ayurveda to understand how this CBD leaf-based extract works on eczema patients as well. Maybe Avnish can add more insight from a skincare and cosmetics point of view.
Definitely. So CBD as an ingredient has also been proven to be very good for moisturizing the skin as well as retaining the right kind of moisture over a longer period. It has also been very useful because of its comedogenic properties when used with the hemp seed oil, which means it can seep through the skin in a much better way. And because of an internal receptor system known as the endocannabinoid receptor system that we have within our bodies, it helps us to kind of regulate the pathway much easier. So, for example, just like we consume certain sugars and we get like a serotonin kick, the same way by applying CBD, we get that kind of a transmission within the system. So as a skincare ingredient, hemp seed oil as well as CBD oil, both are being used. And in fact, there are lots of products that are being sold in the
So
market.
Avnish, that means the CBD oil or the hemp seed oil would not have THC.
The hemp seed oil does not have any THC because it's extracted basically cold pressed from the seed of the hemp plant. But a CBD extract usually contains THCs approximately of less than 0.3%. So it does contain THC because it's still extracted from the leaf of the cannabis plant in this case. So it's not THC free, but it contains negligent amounts of it.
Yeah, because some of the Middle East countries where the laws are among the strictest in the world, they do permit sale of CBD oil in the shops and available even online, one can check. So that means this doesn't fall under the definition of narcotic, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So it's being rescheduled globally into a commodity that would not be scheduled under any of the narcotic schedules currently.
So it can be used, one can buy and use as a beauty product?
That's correct. In fact, we have a skin-based oil and a serum that is mainly for as a night serum. One can use it, which contains coconut oil and this leaf extract as well.
How does one buy from you?
Our products are available online on our website. Our website is bohicolife.com and bohico.org. And we are also, some of our seed-based products are available across Noble Plus chemist stores in Bombay. And we have a few stores in Bangalore and Delhi as well, where
So
we are
after my
distributing.
morning workout, when I want a dose of protein, I can have hemp seeds.
Absolutely. In fact, you should go with the hemp protein powder because that will have concentrated protein. So you're basically getting closer to 40 grams of protein per 100 grams of serving.
Oh, for that I'll have to do a lot of weightlifting. Okay. So, okay, now just to, from what we have so far understood, just to sum up and then I'll come to how you got this idea. So we are saying that this plant has been grown in India for centuries and there has been use in the Ayurveda and it is there in our ancient text, the Charas, what do you call,
The Charak Samhita and
Charak
the
Samhita.
yes.
It has been there and it has a lot of medicinal use. So seeds, so basic difference is what has THC, what doesn't have. When THC as a chemical is there, it means it is narcotic, it has psychoactive impact. And what doesn't have THC is not a narcotic, correct? And bhang comes in between, which are low THC, but permitted in India, which is called intoxicant. Would that be correct word?
That's
It's regulated like alcohol.
And not a narcotic.
That's
That's
correct.
correct.
Okay. So, and fiber is what we can, so seeds are health food. The fiber, you can make textile and various other uses.
Yes, that's correct.
And then you have plants,
Mhm.
which is you can make bhang and Ayurveda products. And you have
Yes.
flowers, which is recreational use because it has high THC. But you
Correct.
can have, in certain cases, medicinal use with license from government
Yes,
and with
That's-
proper controls.
that's right. Absolutely.
Correct? So great. Now just tell how you got this idea of all the companies when you were students. Why hemp? I mean, you could have done so many other things.
That's a great question, Atul Bhai. This actually takes us back to our days at HR College. Fortunately, under Dr. Shahi and a lot of the senior leadership, we were always encouraged to pursue our entrepreneurship tendencies. So back in our college days, we used to be part of an organization called SITE, Students in Free Enterprise, now called Enactus. And we had instituted a project called Project Chirag, where we used to travel to rural parts of India, the absolute rural heartland, and essentially provide them with a at a norm manufactured by disabled populations. But during our visits, whether it was Punjab, whether it was Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, whichever state we went to, we saw the custom, culture, language, everything changed. But the one thing that was everywhere was the cannabis plant. We saw that cannabis, or bhang as they call it in the villages in India, was growing everywhere wild. Later on, we learned through narcotic commissioners that almost 60% of all districts in India just see the wild growth of the cannabis plant. but the enforcement of such wild growth is practically unfeasible. It would make sense, and this is exactly how the regulators and bureaucrats themselves, who are very progressive, think. It would make sense to be able to redirect how this is being currently as a waste resource towards industrial and medical use. But back in our college days, it was just a pipe dream. But around the same time, I visited West Australia. I gone to meet my cousins there, and I realized a lot of part of rural West Australia was in a tough economic state, except one town that was different called Margaret River. They were prosperous. There's development. When things are thriving, there's always a chatter around the area. So I was curious. I went and I asked a few locals, what do you do differently from the other town that is bankrupt and it's just on your outskirts? He said, we do two things. We grow grapes for wine, and today Jacobs Creek, Margaret Rivers, one of the top wine counties in the world, and we grow hemp that for everything else. We make our surfboards from the fiber. We make our shirts from the fiber. We use the fiber for automobiles. We use the seed for our salads and our oils. We are studying it for biofuels. We're using the flower for medicines and pharmaceuticals. And that was just the eureka moment. That if a country like Australia, whose historic plant is not even cannabis, has been able to do so much. If countries like China have been able to dominate 70% of the global fiber and hemp textiles, or 60% of the CBD space, it's because they had this vision 10, 15 years ago. And that's why we realized when we came back, we said, can we do this in college? He said, no, this is too big. Let's take some time, really build our white collar credentials, understand from corporate life. And in 2013, we came back and all seven of us, we said, now's the time for us to explore something so unique and really see how far we can take this in terms of building the larger ecosystem.
So you guys are the pioneers in trying to create an industry. And I have at least 10 questions on why the ban in India, and on the legal side, when was it banned? But we'll come to it later. But before that, I want to bring in Raj Nair, a strategy consultant, to really take this forward to the angle of industry and export, and how does one go about building this, both as a stronger Boheco, as your own company, and from the national perspective. Yes, Raj.
Thank you, Atul. What I'll do is I'll try and cover this thing you suggested by asking these two young promoters of Boheco a series of questions. And I'll ask a set of questions which will, the answer to that would help not just Boheco, but also those startups who are not even entering this field. So these are fundamental questions. So, Jan and Ani, a question to you is, do you want to become, you're pioneers, and you want to become like Edison or like Tesla? Let me explain. Both were eminent businessmen come innovators of the late 19th century, early 20th century. Their name is like their household names even today. There are edifices built after them. There are labs named after them. In the case of Edison, there was Edison Electric, which has now become GE. So they were great, okay? But they were different. Tesla was innovation, innovation, innovation. He couldn't care less whether it had an immediate application or a future application. So he's the one who virtually destroyed Edison's DC transmission of electricity by introducing AC transmission with the help of Westinghouse. Edison fought back, but that's not the story for today. A whole lot of innovation from both the sides. Many of Tesla's innovations did not see the light of the day. It was not meant for the day. Today, for instance, they are talking about transmitting electricity without wires, without cables. That was invented by Tesla over 100 years ago. Okay, but Tesla died a pauper. Edison became rich and famous. Both are famous for their technological thing. Now, you seem to be working on the legal thing with the government, on research on seeds, on cultivation processes so that what's grown wild will become cultivable as opposed to just growing. You're talking about how to make intermediates, how to make end products. That's a huge responsibility for a young company across the value chain. Okay, so my question is, yes, there is a great opportunity to completely create a whole new industry in India, make farmers, small farmers and medium-sized farmers wealthy, because you're creating a new high return crop. But that is provided you're successful. So the question now is, do you want to be Tesla or do you want to be Edison?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for
Good
that,
question.
Raj. What I'll do is I think I'll offer a bit of a primer and I'll let Avnish also round this up as well. I think to be very candid, I believe all of us founders through a lot of our readings in college were personal fans of the innovativeness, eccentricity, and ahead of its time nature of Nikola Tesla as a human being. But that being said, understanding that because cannabis and hemp and building a new industry in first generation of stability, it is extremely important to combine the shades of stability that Edison brought in terms of growing business to scale with, I would say, practical commercial realities and industrial realities, as well as partnering with other stakeholders within the ecosystem to enhance opportunities. But of course, not everything is completely black and white in our book. So we like to view it in such a way where stability of Edison is met with the small cultural refine of the moonshot of Tesla. So I would say it would definitely be Edison as the base, but streaks of Tesla in between.
Okay.
Yeah,
Avnish,
yeah. I think
you
pretty
also
much.
want to be Edison in Tesla clothing?
Uh, Pretty much the same answer. Just one
Okay.
addition would be that Edison found his JP Morgan quite quickly. So we want to be able to do that intelligently and scale it because we are not innovators.
Yeah.
We saw a pattern. We saw something that was opportunistic. We saw the logic. We saw the logic in it, and we saw global tailwinds. So I think, and the most important thing in entrepreneurship we have learned is timing. More than anything else, it was about timing for us, and that time called for it. Hence, we invested some of our personal time into it.
Great. So you said timing is right. Now you got to be. Let me bring the concept of value chain, right from the you're getting there in the seed to farming processes, processing of the output, product, marketing, and sales. You're all over the value chain, and you're too small for that. So which parts of the value chain will you focus on in order to succeed? That's one question. And before that, I'd like you to answer another question. That is, when you have so many options of products, medical, health, wellness, exotic foods, etc., well, where will you concentrate? I just want to tell you from experience, I know that consumers pay a lot of money per kg or per gram or whatever, anything that is good for the ego or for their health. So medical applications, cosmetics, exotic foods, they'll pay for it. And you're going to be a small volume player in the beginning. You can't spread yourself thin. So why would you even bother about textiles and other or even application in paint and so on and so forth, which you are experimenting with, which don't give you much value because those are things which people made into or a textile. There may be difference, but not so visible. So where would you concentrate going forward as opposed to what you did in the past? Forget what you did in the past. That what had to be done has been done. Now going forward, what would you focus on? Got 100 opportunities.
Got it. John, I'll go first, and then you can chime in.
Please.
Yeah, sure. So I think this has been like a number one topic of discussion amongst the founders at Bohiko, amongst our advisors as well, because of course, as you mentioned, with the set of activities we are doing, some of it had to happen because we didn't have an option. We had to kind of kick off some of the processes because we wanted to engage in some other activities. So it was like a chicken and egg argument. And this whole supply demand concept is also a chicken and egg argument. For example, do I just focus on cultivating enough cannabis so that I have enough supply and then start building demand? Or do I go out and get enough customers and businesses to get excited about buying cannabis and then backward integrate? So I think the latter opportunities is a lot more rational, because any stable economic system would primarily be driven by the demand for the product. And in this case, we are also assessing demand across different levels and segments of product categories, as you mentioned. The focus of Bohiko going ahead is primarily going to be health and wellness, as you mentioned, from a revenue perspective, from a revenue multiple perspective, as well as value addition to the end consumer's life. We know that's a fundamental challenge that comes with is building a consumer story, especially in India. Second thing we also understand is that the new age Indian consumer is actually a lot more inquisitive about our traditional texts. For example, a new age Indian consumer cares about turmeric latte more than probably what Jahan and me cared during our generations. So we are seeing that transition into the adoption for a lot more Ayurvedic and traditional remedies packaged in a modern form in that way. So the objective is to be a direct to consumer company, focus on winning the consumer while we've kind of built part of the value chain, but let the experts handle it. There are enough people with big factories and a lot of capital who can do that better than
So
us.
good news for your investors is that now you're going to focus on things that matter going
Absolutely.
ahead. Did Jan want
But
to add something?
Raj, since you talked on investment, uh, how did you raise funds, John?
It's
And
Mhm.
so, was it not difficult to raise funds?
That's a great question, Atul Bhai. I think I'll take you through the chronology. When we began the company, as most founders and entrepreneurs do, we bootstrapped ourselves as a large team of 7 co-founders, which helped us get a good amount of runway to test the waters and understand where we could potentially head in, to be able to scale into different businesses and understand where the true revenue and business potential was. Fortunately, around 2015 and 2017, we were very fortunate. We happened to encounter and meet with Mr. Ratan Tata, as well as Mr. Rajan Anandan, who were truly convinced in the larger vision of the story and the larger vision of what we were trying to do. Take nothing away from the fact that even during the process of raising seed funds, the important part we realized was very difficult and very time consuming, required patience, is awareness. Building the awareness narrative about the potential, the sustainability, as well as the strategic element of focusing around high value areas and being able to identify them in an early stage advantage.
So, you've been able to raise enough funds?
Yes, we've been fortunate. We've been able to raise enough funds through the process, and of course, we have a very open investor relations team at a founder level. There's always continuously in discussion with institutional investors and family offices, strategic investors, continuously through a cycle to keep them updated of how the industry is shaping as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've got two
So,
more
Raj,
questions.
I was
Two more
just coming
questions.
to you only. Yeah.
You're entering a niche in some sense, and when these niches become larger, they don't remain niches anymore. Either they get commoditized or some big boys come and walk all over you. Okay, I wish that doesn't happen to you, and I don't think it will happen. So, what are you thinking of? For instance, I'll be more specific. If you were to make end products for customers, not only your product has to be good and well packaged, but there's a lot of expenditure on branding and all that stuff. Can be done, no question about it. But once the big boys come in, there'll be that much more competition. Now, have you got an alternative approach? Like you will supply some let's say formula containing your magic ingredient to the Unilevers and other the world who will market cosmetics, or other companies will market nutraceuticals and so on. And hardcore pharmaceutical companies, rather than take them on in their business? What would you approach the problem as?
Definitely, definitely. So I think that's a transition that we will have to make in the business cycle, because to be honest, as you put it across as the big boys, we don't see the big boys coming in till this industry becomes a 150, 200 crore industry. This is technically the guinea
I want to
pig
see you
phase.
2,000 crores, not
Definitely, definitely.
150.
No, I'm saying it's their entry point in terms of them at least entering the industry or seeing what
Okay,
opportunities
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, yeah.
from that perspective. So it's
Okay.
going to be key that when they also enter, they have already seen that what the guinea pigs have been able to achieve and not achieve. And we also believe this is not a zero sum game. There is not going to be one winner. It's a market where we have raw pressery also selling, real also selling, and Tropicana also selling.
Yeah.
They might be like commoditized juices, for example, but we have a market for everything. Secondly, we also believe that eventually, if a big boy has to kind of pick up some of the smaller boys or acquire some of these companies, they would be looking not at factories but at consumers. So even if there is a business proposition for our current investors and ourselves, it makes sense to go after the consumer rather than go after the larger factories. But in the interest of the business, definitely the point that you made of having a magic potion that would be labeled as Boico's key ingredient and then making it a fix in the existing supply chain of the larger companies is more assured revenue, is less riskier revenue, and definitely would showcase better on the multiple side for the company.
Sure.
So we
And
really
Raj, I'd just
that
like to also add a small bit here as well. One of the key activities we are fortunate enough to have received, the right resources with in partnerships is with the Tata Trust and with our CSIR scientific partnerships to actually breed the right versions of cannabis, whether industrial nature, medical nature, for different types of Indian varieties and land races. That due to our efforts, our scientific team, our sort of investment back in the past through and navigation to help achieve these licenses. We anticipate that there will be a point in the future when scaled cultivation will be important. And at that point is when we see this sort of larger inflection point that you're alluding to as well, where at a processing end through cultivation, harvesting, the complete vertical integration, there'd be an Intel Inside model sort of hybrid offering where it would be able to empower the pharmaceutical companies, the CPG global companies of the world with the right ingredient in areas which would create a value added differential. So it's definitely within the horizon as well.
So from the Intel Inside issue, let's move to exports. Approximately what's the percentage of export? I don't know the revenue number, but approximately what's the export percentage?
Yeah. So as of our last financial year, closer to 20 to 22% of our business came from export revenues, and this was primarily exporting hemp customers being in the Middle East and Australia.
Now, Atul and I come from an area where we have prospered because we've flipped it and said we're 80 to 100% export and only a little bit for the domestic market, primarily because there are so many good reasons. You get to play in a competitive market, you become very good, your quality becomes high, your packaging becomes good, you become very disciplined in terms of time schedules and reliability, which helps you in the domestic market also. But more than that, the margin will be 2 to 3 times the margin you'll get here. So have you ever thought of flipping this and saying, look, let me think of export? After all, even the painkiller market itself is more than $10 billion. So you can go to 300-400 crores without even bothering about anything else in export. It requires a different mindset. Any thoughts on that?
Definitely. So that is one of our major goals, as you mentioned, for stability in revenue and for exponential growth. Having supply chains outside India for distribution definitely makes sense. The one tricky part for us where we have to build value is the clinical aspect of the products we are using, the regulatory aspect, because there is a lot more regulation around all the health-based products, and even more regulation when you add cannabis to health-based products. So we want to make sure that everything we're doing is as per gold standard globally. Hence, we are taking the right steps in terms of the clinical trials with National Institute of Ayurveda, getting these trials registered in international journals so that our products become more export worthy. Because India also, unfortunately, in the last few years, doesn't have a great name in exporting herbal supplements and herbal products because of the multiple FDA issues that we've gone through. So we do see that as a big opportunity, but we are also aware of the time and the risks that are involved in attempting that. But it's an eventuality for sure.
One last question, which is very
Okay,
close to
so
Atul's heart, which is
yeah,
how do
yeah.
you actually create a huge agricultural base and opportunity for farmers?
That's a great question. I think I'll start off. I think the key is awareness and farmer training and understanding. Now, an important part to understand when we talk of cannabis and hemp as a crop is historically it has grown in rural parts of India. So there is an element of familiarity about how its growing pattern should be, its day length should be, what type of nutrients it's looking for, average sort of time of cultivation, which is say 3-4 months as compared to 8-9 months of a cotton, or say a couple of years for other conventional crops. The important part from an agriculture point of view is twofold: getting the farmers the seed and helping them understand from seed to plant what is the process of growth. That's where
Jahan, does it
yes.
need hilly weather?
It's optimal in hilly weather. Abneesh may be able to
Correct.
give
When
it.
we're talking about growing cannabis, we're also talking about growing two types of cannabis. One would be industrial type, which is more hemp type crop, and one is the medical type, which would be the high THC one. So if we're talking about the industrial type, we would require some kind of a temperate or a sub-temperate zone, which means the hilly areas where we have relatively longer day lengths during summer, and also the temperature starts dropping towards the fall. That's when the plant starts flowering. So in its cannabis does have a certain type of a requirement from weather perspective, but in India, as we see, like more than 60-70% of the districts it can be cultivated at scale, whether it's an industrial variety or a medical variety.
So what is India's share in the world market in terms of agriculture of this plant?
It's as of now, I would frankly say it's negligent. It's not even in micro percentages because
It's
India doesn't have
yeah.
a formalized supply chain yet. As we
Correct.
mentioned
So
that
which countries grow more of cannabis?
uh, overall, if we go to see, the Chinese are leading the way in terms of hemp cultivation for fiber seed purposes primarily. As far as medical cannabis is concerned, we have the United Kingdom, we have Canada, we within the European Union, we have Netherlands, Germany, most of
Portugal.
the advanced nations, Portugal, in South America, we have Peru, Brazil, as well as Uruguay. These countries are cultivating.
And
Australia also has its own medical cannabis
yeah,
laws.
and even on the industrial side, countries like France, even the United States, that had 0 acres of industrial hemp cultivations 5 years ago, has 150,000 acres, I think, right now, of hemp for fiber and seed cultivated in the United States. So almost 45, 47 countries are currently in the market, but China, Canada, USA, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom are leading the fore from industrial or a medical standpoint currently as well.
Okay, so we have plenty of questions, but there's one common question, one question many have asked is the legal aspects.
Yes.
What is banned in India? Why is that banned? When the ban came? I mean, if you're saying that historically for ages we've been growing this plant, then since when the ban has come?
That's a great question. I think I'll start off with this and I'll let Avnish chime in. The first sign of this ban began in
But just
1961.
brief each answer because
Sure.
we have plenty of questions.
No worries. The first sign began with an International Convention on Drug Control in 61 and was first enforced by the 1985 NDPS Act, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. Now, in this act, there are sections that allow state governments to create their own laws allowing for cultivating this cannabis plant or hemp plant for industrial, medical, scientific, and horticultural use. So the act allows for this use from the stalk, the seed, the leaf, and the flower. But what is banned is the recreational use of the flower, the resin, that is called ganja, and charas, as per the Narcotic Act. All other elements of it, the leaf, the seed, the stalk, and even the flower for medical use for research currently and commercial in the future, are allowed as per the NDPS Act currently.
So 1985 is not long back.
Correct.
So why did government bring this ban in 1985 when it was
It was
permitted earlier?
It was basically under the prohibitionist mindset of the then Republican American governments, ranging from Ronald Reagan all the way up to Bush in the 80s, where had this campaign against the use of marijuana, as they used to call it, as a that was primarily the aspect. India had to ban it because the Americans wanted to call it a drug globally in that case. And now we have reached a point where more than 50% of American states have legalized it either for recreational or medical use already. So India, in fact, it was completely against our interest to kind of ban this because of the religious as well as the social use this plant had, along with the medical aspect that our Hakims and Ayurvedic practitioners were working with. It was force, basically global pressure on India to be able to do this.
Yes.
So it is the recreational use of the hemp plant, THC, which is made from the flower, that is what is banned for the recreational use. It's allowed
That's
for the
correct.
medical use if you have
That's correct.
license. But
That's
it's
correct.
banned for recreational use. And as you said, marijuana is a slang word for the same.
For
the hemp,
cannabis.
for the cannabis, it is a slang word used, but commonly now use marijuana for a recreational purpose. You know that weed or marijuana, which is commonly used for recreational purpose, which now many countries have permitted. Correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So now there is a question that in America, this is a matured industry. Jayesh is asking, cannabis is a matured industry in US, Canada, Netherlands, and in other countries. So what is the difference that they are permitting these countries and what we are doing in India?
I think it's a very, very good question. So just quickly throw the floor open. Mainly in America, cannabis is federally illegal. So as far as the feds are concerned, cannabis is illegal. All the states have developed their own regulation for regulating the recreational use or the medical use of cannabis. So that way it is different. Canada has federally legalized cannabis, so you can buy recreational, medical, and industrial cannabis legally across in Canada. Netherlands, technically, federally, cannabis is not legalized, but it is highly tolerated. So there is a tolerated use of cannabis amongst the social ecosystem, and it is considered as a social taboo. So people are still allowed to go and buy cannabis in legal stores, but it's considered as a social taboo there. Whereas in India, you cannot buy any of the ganja, which is the cannabis flower. You are only allowed to get a prescription product of the bhang extract, which contains a little bit of THC, or you can buy over-the-counter products such as cosmetics or food-based products, etc. So India does not have any recreational market, unlike all these three countries that we spoke about.
And even
No,
from a
because it's
medical point
banned.
of
I mean, whatever is used recreational is illegal.
It's illegal. That's correct.
correct.
I
And
mean,
from a medical, yes.
government's own survey done 2 years back said that there are 3 crore people in India,
Yes.
more than 3 crore who consume cannabis for recreational purpose,
Correct.
what we call ganja.
Yes.
So that is illegal, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, Raj, to bring you in, What do you think? Now, what we've heard so far that agriculture-wise, I mean, we grow so much, but not really. There is a fine line between what is legal, what is illegal, and China has taken away major part of the world market. What I understand, 65% of the China. America is growing more, Mexico growing. So multiple countries are growing, and what was traditionally ours, Indian, where we had what we have got in our texts centuries back, we are lagging behind now, and as Jahan called, negligible production. So what do you think, how India as a country should build this as a large industry?
The thing is that we have to move from foraging what is just growing in the wild to actually cultivating. Now, for a farmer to say, I'm going to take the risk on cultivating this, they have to understand what the risks are. As Jahan said a little while ago, it's something which grows every 3 months, you can harvest almost, right? Every 3 or 4 months,
Correct.
right? So it's not like you're taking a risk like on sugarcane or cotton or so on and so forth. And these are hardy crops, so probably they'll be less prone to attacks. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just
You're
going
right,
by
absolutely.
what I've heard. Okay?
Absolutely.
So if, for instance, you are able to set up create a demand for end product, there'll be a demand for a certain amount of processing of the seeds and so on and so forth. Then you can, and you do, let's say 100 acres or 50 acres of demonstration plot where you can consume it yourself and sell it to people like, process it, semi-process it and sell it to people like Boeco. Then people will see the kind of money that's being made, and then there'll be neighboring farmers will say, hey, can I also grow? Can you show me what seeds to use? Will you and you can say, yes, you grow it, I'll give you the seeds, I'll buy back. And now the new agricultural policy allows that. So that's how it's going to happen over a period of the next 10 years. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 2 seasons, but the work has to start now. And it can't be started from the farm and say, let's look for a buyer, and then that buyer looks for somebody else like Boeco to buy. It has to start somewhere in between and then work backwards. I stand corrected by Avnish and Jahan. Is that the right strategy?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Avnish may be able to share insight on this also.
No, I think he's got it spot on, that the objective is to be able to make sure there is enough demand so that we don't have to get into complications with our farmers, because there's already been a lot of backlash on a lot of these contractual obligations going flat at the last moment. So we need to be very certain of the yield as well as the purchase price in that case. But we definitely believe cannabis and hemp are going to bring in a new economic model where the farmer can make a lot more money. So it has been a very farmer-friendly thing in every country. It has so far taken root.
No, in India,
So,
it's very
so can I
important
ask-
to encourage. Yeah, Raj.
I request you to get Nayan Patel on the line. He was there earlier. He was interested in the farming side. So what questions will he have to Avnish and Jahan?
Yeah, Nayan, you want to ask question on this?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I had been ever since I had heard them and known about it, I was wondering why we have not been able to commercialize cultivation of this. I mean, legal framework apart, I think they can always be worked around. If opium and all other things are still cultivated in India, hemp is a small baby. But does it work out lucrative? Is it economical for a farmer to utilize his land to cultivate hemp? As you rightly put, Raj, and they confirm that unless you create a demand, right, the farmers will not get into it. Point number one. Point number two, per acre, what is the return? Today, everybody talks about, I'm a farmer myself, I have been very interested in this subject ever since, but never got to understand what is it in for a farmer? How much does he make per acre? Now, this is something, if some economics is worked out and propagated, I think slowly and gradually farmers will come up with new. You see, things like various herbs are now picking up in India. India is one of the largest herb cultivator and processor now. Where be it turmeric, be it anything else. Why not hemp work be taken up in the same manner, more from the medicinal view angle and not necessarily from the recreational or from the industrial? Have you worked on that in that direction?
Definitely, definitely. So, as there are two major parts to your question, the first part is the legal framework. So, that was the challenge. There was zero conversation about hemp and cannabis cultivation in India between 1985 and 2013-14. It is only after we started engaging with state governments in Uttarakhand that these licenses were kind of given. Now, as far as the economics of per acre cultivation comes in, we are talking about multiple variables. What kind of hemp plant are we cultivating? Are we cultivating it for fiber purposes, or are we cultivating it for leaf and medical purposes? So between the whole gamut, we have different set of input requirements, which would eventually give us a separate output as well. And every location, geographic location, would be ideal for a separate kind of cannabis crop. For example, Uttarakhand would be very good for medical cultivation, whereas Madhya Pradesh would be very good for industrial cultivation, where you would also look at the relative economics of cost of input, cost of scale, availability of land, etc., etc. So industrial hemp is a very, very, as the term suggests, mass acre crop. Because if you're growing anything for textile or fiber purposes, you're usually cultivating thousands of acres of it for it to make sense there. But as you correctly pointed out, the medical application of it is extremely viable, extremely financially profitable for the farmer for the amount of period of time and the inputs he's putting in. So currently we are performing a few of these prototyping exercises in UP as well as in Uttarakhand. In terms of understanding yields, extracts, etc., etc. Because we are also setting up the metrics of what this thing means, right? What does an acre of cannabis mean? Am I buying bulk material worth X kilos, or am I buying active constituent worth Y kilos? And what is the market eventually determine? So it is a step-by-step process that we are getting into. We also see a few state governments developing commercialization policies. See, it's not happened so far because nobody has actually given so much care to it. Nobody has actually gone out and tried to do it. And we expect the government to kind of on itself come up with these things. I don't think so that's the solution. It required smaller companies, it required smaller organizations to push, create some kind of a base level, and gradually we will see a lot more things happening. But the first few baby steps have been taken in order to get to that commercial level. Because the second thing is we have all the cannabis in India, but we don't know what is standard cannabis. So we don't know what cannabis to grow. Even
So
though we have
Nayan, when will you start growing hemp? Trupti, yeah, Nayan.
Yeah, I would love to, because you see what happened. Let's say turmeric started in the south, right? Andhra and Tamil Nadu, they did that. Slowly and gradually, it has gone even to the northeast.
Yes.
I mean, people
Right.
have seen, I mean, farmers try to find out what is best for him in his region, how much can he get per acre. Now, multi-cropping is again another business. Now, hemp, I understand, I mean, from the seeing the plant, he could do it on the sidelines of his other crop as well,
Definitely.
rather than just depending on this single crop. He can do it as a multi-crop or a parallel crop. It can be used differently. But all this has to be propagated. People like R.A. Mashelkar and all should be roped in, who are the real guns to push the government on herbs and all that. And maybe we do that. I, as a farmer, would love to do that if it works out economical. Why not? So, you know, vagaries of bad weather or monsoon or anything may not be affecting hemp growth as much as maybe the other crops. I presume. I have not done this. I do not know.
technically it's a weed, right?
It's
We
a
call
weed.
it a weed.
So for that,
Yeah.
all it needs is moisture or something like that.
That's correct. And that's why it grows so wildly across Uttarakhand, Haryana. If you travel to North India right now, you are seeing cannabis plants across the roadway because it's just like self-pollinating.
But that's the fear I have. If it is growing wild and that's what is being harvested and sold. The farmer will not cultivate it because cultivation costs money unless a demand has been created so huge that we will have to cultivate. Like for example,
The
in Europe,
quality parameter,
they
the
grow
quality
grass.
yield parameter completely changes.
Yeah, sure.
So as
Like they grow grass. They are grass fields. They are agriculture as a product, and we just use it as a waste here. But I think should connect and see how we can do that
Definitely, we
definitely.
will.
in a different.
Definitely.
So I'll take up one by one question. I think Jayesh Parekh is here. Jayesh was also asking a question. Jayesh, you there?
I think we took his question. It was about the cannabis industry in
Okay.
USA, Netherlands. We took that question.
Okay, so let me take a few more questions. What are your thoughts on liposomal CBD? Liposomal or liposomal CBD? I don't know what it means, but have you understood
Yeah.
that question?
Yeah. So in fact, basically liposomal CBD is something again that you would be using some kind of a fat or a lipid to make CBD a lot more bioavailable. In fact, there have been a lot of experiments that have already happened to make CBD a lot more bioavailable, because considering it's a relatively larger molecule. There are different techniques that are being used to split the CBD apart or to make it more nano in its own form. But honestly, we feel that is kind of over engineering the technology for the stage the industry is at. Let's have people having more and more CBD first regularly, and then we can get to liposomal nano-able CBD as well. John, you have
I
something?
think I have just 2 points here. Number one is liposomal CBD is normally CBD that's completely isolated. So it's 99% CBD isolate put in a form factor. Number two, pardon me. Number two, regarding liposomal CBD, the biggest current regulation roadblock is the categorization of it. Is it a pharmaceutical? Is it a dietary supplement? Is it a nutraceutical? And that's where even Europe and North America are at odds in terms how categorization of something like this would work. So it's early days, but it's definitely something on the cards for the future once isolation technology and CBD isolation becomes a much more, I would say, considerable element.
Okay, does the anti-inflammatory application of CBD have an immune response?
So yeah, as I was mentioning, CBD, THC, all being cannabinoids at a larger scale, we have an endocannabinoid system within our body. The endocannabinoid system works through a receptor system of these I think G-coupled receptors called CB1 and CP2. CB2. These receptors are present all across our body, and they're present in all mammals. So it's present in our skin, it's present in our hair, it's present in our blood, etc., etc. So these CB1 and CB2 receptors definitely hook on to have an immune system response, because they're also one of the few chemical compounds that break the blood-brain barrier. So THC as well as CBD both, because of the way the receptors work, can break through the blood-brain barrier and definitely have an immune response that's present. So there have been lots of studies that have been showcased. In fact, CBD has also been used for, I think, a cytokine study for COVID patients as well. That's under review currently as an anti-inflammatory product.
Okay, that's very interesting. So a question from Shrishti. In India, which body regulates, checks the quality of CBD and or hemp food and skin products?
So all the hemp food-based products in that case would be regulated by the Food Safety Authority of India. It would also be regulated by our Ayush Authority, which is the state FDA and the Ayush Ministry. All the cosmetics ingredients are again under the state FDA, which is under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. And import of isolated CBD is regulated by the DGFT as well as the Ministry of Health.
And what about skin products?
Skin products is under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, state FDA.
Okay. So you have to deal with these various authorities for your approvals?
Yes, that's probably the reason we didn't have any cannabis companies before us.
Yeah. Right. You know what Raj said about export, the software export from India in 1988-89 was less than $100 million. And it was not seen as an industry attractive to large business houses. And it attracted many first generation entrepreneurs like me and Raj and many other professionals to really get into technology business. And today it is a $200 billion export. Even initially, we had to work with government a lot and on policies, on really getting them on our side and ensuring that we can grow as an industry. So I'm sure you guys can also do the same. And the future can be much bigger than what you today visualize. Now, further to questions for production and cultivation, a question from Krishan. What is required and what is the business potential for the grower? I think business potential, I think we discussed already with Nayan on this. And anything else you want to add as to what is required in terms of production, cultivation, or you?
I think, yeah, to cultivate any cannabis in anywhere in India, you require a license from your state excise. So whether you're cultivating hemp, you're cultivating medical cannabis, you cannot cultivate it without a license. Now, in order to get that license, that requisite state needs a policy in place to be able to allow you to cultivate and have a framework for you to cultivate under. So currently there are 2 to 3 states that have these frameworks, and Uttarakhand is the only state that has a commercial framework.
Okay, here is a question from Rajiv. The world legal cannabis is growing at CAGR of 18% and expected to reach USD 75 billion by 27.
That's correct. Yes.
So,
It's the India
is
share.
it true, and what is India's share likely to be?
See, I think, there's an important part to understand when we talk of the legal cannabis
And
market.
we're talking about the legal cannabis here, legal cannabis.
Correct. So as per the legal global cannabis market, it refers to mostly medical as well as the recreational use, because that is the huge market driver in terms of profitability and revenue in Canada and parts of the United States. So in terms of that, that is where the largest offset in terms of value addition has first come about, to be able to add the industry multiple on top. But what we're seeing over the course of time is even the recreational market is being retrofitted towards larger scale medical use, because every even the flower and leaf, we have only spoken about THC and CBD, but there are 115 other such compounds that have medical uses that are being explored almost by the day. So in and scope of volume contribution. Our goal is, even if we are able to touch a hand tip a few percentage points, even single digit, for the next 5-7 years, it at least gives us an opening to be able to have greater sort of market capture in the future with 20 to 40 to 60% with a gradual step up.
There's a question from Sudhakaran. That
If the ban is if America federally lifts the ban. The moment America federally lifts the ban, the UNODC, which is the treaty that that governs all of us will have to lift the ban, because like the proposing nation has lifted the ban. And that would probably create a much more cleaner ecosystem. And that is more probable to happen if we have Mr. Joe Biden become president rather than Trump continuing to be president.
But don't you think by that time US would have developed a very strong industry already, since half the states don't have a ban?
No, so that's fine, right? See, cannabis is again at a product level, it's going to be a very inward facing industry. So if the Americans have legalized it, they've been able to create a $10 billion internal market. The same way if India legalizes it, India will be able to create its own internal market. It's like tobacco and alcohol, right? Majority of Indians consume Indian tobacco and majority of Indians consume Indian alcohol. Of course, there is that delta that we have would be importing those things from a recreational perspective. So it's about Americans treated. All our policies are related to the West.
So the products that you are selling on your website, the beauty products, the Ayurvedic products, so what do you think would be of interest to the participants who are there today? Say, let's start with the ladies, that what beauty products that you sell that can be of interest to them?
Correct. So I think, John, I'll go first. The first product I think for everyone would be the hemp seed oil. It's probably one of the best oils that is out there for a multi-purpose application, whether you're looking to use it in your hair, you're looking to apply on your skin, or you are looking to consume. The benefits of it are unparalleled. In fact, we are also doing some relative studies to prove that how it is helping in a lot of these areas. Even like less than 10 to 15 ml of the oil on a daily basis does provide you with some of the micronutrients that are present. So as a multi-purpose product, as a good experience, it's a very, very good product, and none of the seed-based products contain any THC. So there's no need to worry about, you're only getting high on health, you're not getting high otherwise, kind of thing.
No, you selling legally means, of course, it is proper use. So that
Correct.
worry is not there. Otherwise, it's banned in India.
Correct.
Okay, then any other product for, you can call beauty product?
Yeah, so in fact, John, you want to talk about our partnership with Rustic Art. So as we were mentioning about few other brands also working with Bohiko and manufacturing products using hemp as an ingredient. So we have products that are coming from Rustic Art. We have bunch of skin creams and lotions that are blended with other fancy ingredients as well. So there's that whole beauty range. We have a CBD based oil also, which is in fact which contains the extract of the bhang, and it's blended with coconut. This is an application oil, and this is extremely good for removing any kind of marks that you would have on your skin.
So it removes the wrinkles?
Yeah, it helps in de-wrinkling, skin tightening a little bit, and it also assists in getting rid of acne. That's one of the best things it helps with.
And the Ayurvedic products that you have, how do we use them?
So one is the skincare product that I mentioned. The second one is the arthritis product. So that is a #1 selling product as of now. It's an extract of the cannabis leaf as well as the cannabis seed, and it is blended together in a formulation. It is an local application oil for arthritis. And we have seen very, very good functional improvement in patients using this on a daily basis. So that is related to a certain indication. And
so
our third product,
it relieves the pain,
yes,
correct?
Correct. And also eventually help them in becoming more functional. And our last and third product is a prescription product that is mainly for chronic pain. So people who are suffering from extremely chronic diseases and would require that kind of a dose, that is a prescription product through registered Ayurvedic practitioners. That's been good.
And your website is bohiko.org, correct?
That's correct. And we have bohikolife.com as well, which is our product website for all our health and wellness products.
So Raj, any advice from you?
Well, as I said in the beginning, focus year on, and your investors will love you and the market will love you. And do
Definitely.
think about trying to capture the US market
Yeah,
or
Absolutely.
European market. You can always have tie-ups for that.
definitely.
You guys are doing a
definitely.
great job. Congratulations, and
Oh,
wish you all the very best and all success.
so thanks a lot, Raj. Thank you very much, John and Avnish. This was wonderful, very useful. I think it gave us, you guys have given us a lot of knowledge. We are better educated now on all this, and we could have gone on much longer, but all the good things have to come to an end. And I'm sure many of us would make use of your products, both the Ayurvedic and the beauty products. And I hope people here don't need the products needed for any chronic disease, which need prescription. I hope that occasion doesn't arise, but if they know anyone with such a problem, they can also, of course, access. And I really hope you listen to Raj's advice and focus well,
Definitely.
become a very large company, not just Indian company, but also global company. And make us all at TIE Mumbai very proud of you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's really wonderful, and it's been a great platform. Thank you so much, Atul Bhai, Naveen, the team at TIE Mumbai, Raj, for offering us such great insight, questions, giving us an opportunity to share. And we look forward to continue to being close together with TIE and keep sharing all the latest, greatest developments with hemp and
Absolutely.
cannabis.
It's at TIE Mumbai, we really want to encourage the startups. It's an ecosystem that we've created, under which the startups can get ideas, can get mentoring, can learn, can get to learn from the experts, also help and get the help in funding, and also advice from time to time in terms of strategy, as Raj and I did today. And the whole purpose is to make Mumbai as a very important startup hub globally, and see that our Indian economy grows a lot more and we create a lot more jobs.
Definitely.
Make sure you guys create good number of jobs.
Definitely. I think that's one of the things we want to do for sure in the due course. Not only for ourselves, but everybody out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Naveen, any announcement you want to make?
Not today really, but what we have received is we have received an overwhelming set of questions to the both of you. I would request if you both can have some time among all your co-founders to answer these questions, and we can actually do like an FAQ and send it to all the participants today. So I'll be sending you all the questions. There are multiple questions and a lot of people commenting on a lot of stuff. So I think the only thing that we want to do now is maybe start a hemp club within TIE Bombay and see if we can induct a lot more startups who want to build the industry. So let's take it on as an action, Jahan and Avnish, and let's see what we could do with that.
Definitely. Definitely, we'll take it forward. And if you'd like, I'll happy to share my email address with everyone in the comment section as well, in case anybody would like.
So Naveen, you can coordinate. Just see that every single question gets answered by them, and you can send to those respective people the answers.
Sure, that's the whole idea.
Sure. Thanks so much, Raj. Appreciate